The first time I saw Elena Cruz break someone's heart, she laughed like it was nothing. The second time she broke mine and called it art. I wish I were exaggerating. New York was freezing that November morning, the kind of cold that slips into your clothes and makes you doubt every life choice that brought you outside. I had just arrived from California with 2 suitcases and one fragile sense of hope, clutching a coffee that tasted like burnt ambition. It was my first week at the Whitney Museum internship program, and I was already 5 minutes late. The elevator doors slid open on the 4th floor, and that was when I saw her for the first time. Elena, the museum's rising star. The woman whose name was whispered with reverence and irritation in equal measure. She stood in the center of Gallery B, surrounded by a semicircle of curators and donors, her raven hair catching the skylight as she talked them through her mixed media installation. She had a presence that felt like gravity. People leaned toward her without realizing they were doing it. And I embarrassingly walked straight into a bench because I couldn't look away. She glanced at me when everyone else pretended not to notice, one eyebrow lifting in quiet amusement at the new girl who clearly had no business attempting to walk and breathe at the same time. I would later tell myself that moment was fate. A collision of worlds. A spark meant to ignite something beautiful. But the truth is simpler. Elena Cruz was the kind of woman who collected admiration like trophies. And she saw something in me she could display. I just didn't know it yet. I spent the first 2 weeks observing her from afar. She was brilliance wrapped in contradictions. Sharp yet delicate. Fearless yet fragile. Cold yet intensely alive. People said she wasn't cruel, just detached. Someone who lived in her art more than in the world. They warned me. I heard them. I ignored every word. Because sometimes when she passed by my workstation, her gaze would linger a second too long. Sometimes she would ask my opinion on a lighting choice or layout draft that she didn't need my help with. Sometimes she would smile in this small private way that made me feel chosen. God, I was so easy to choose. Our first real conversation happened the night of the Fall Contemporary Showcase. I had been assigned to manage guest lists, while she floated through the event like a living constellation. When the final set of donors left and I was gathering scattered programs from the floor, she approached quietly. "You work too hard," she said. I froze. She was close enough that I could smell her perfume-warm cedarwood and something crisp, almost winter-like. Her eyes, a deep brown that bordered on black in the dim light, studied me with unnerving intensity. I opened my mouth to respond, but my brain forgot every English word it had known. She laughed soft, amused. "Relax. I'm not going to bite." I found my voice somewhere behind my ribs. "I know. I assume you don't. I'm sure you're very non-biting." "Oh my God, please kill me." She tilted her head, like she was trying to figure me out. "Most people try too hard around me. You don't." I wanted to scream, "I'm trying so hard right now I might combust." But I didn't. Instead I said, "Maybe I just see you as human." A slow smile spread across her lips. People don't usually. And that was the moment. The moment she let me step a little closer to her world. The moment I mistook a crack in the glass for an open door. Over the next month our lives quietly intertwined. We spent late nights adjusting lights, reviewing sketches, arguing about framing angles, sitting on paint-splattered stools sharing vending machine snacks like teenagers hiding in an art classroom. She told me stories about growing up in Chicago, about her mother's music, about the first time she realized art could be a language for pain. I told her things I rarely told anyone. Things about my father's expectations, about leaving home, about always feeling like I was almost enough but not quite. She listened. God, she listened in a way that felt like devotion. One night, when snow pressed against the museum's windows and staff had long gone home, she asked if I wanted to see her private studio. I knew I should have said no. I said yes before she finished the sentence. Her studio was a small corner room filled with half-finished canvases, charcoal dust, and quiet magic. And in the center was a new piece she'd been hiding from everyone. It was messy and beautiful and impossible to describe. Layers of torn paper, ink, thread, and something rawer than honesty. I didn't plan to touch her hand when I stepped closer. She didn't plan to hold mine in return. But it happened. Softly. Naturally. Like it was the most unremarkable thing in the world. She didn't kiss me that night. She just touched my cheek, almost reverently, and whispered, "You see me too clearly." And I believed that meant something. But the thing about falling for someone who lives through their art is this: you never know if they're holding you or studying you. The rupture came like a snapped wire. Her new exhibition, titled Fragments of Devotion, debuted in early spring. Donors raved. Critics swooned. The museum buzzed with elation. Then I saw it. At the center of the gallery stood a 3-panel installation featuring pieces of our late-night conversations, fragments of my handwriting from the notes I left on her drafts, and sketches so intimate they made my chest constrict. She had turned me into art, into a story, into a display. Without asking, without warning. Everyone praised her for capturing vulnerability so authentically. Of course they did. It was mine. When I found her after the showing, she looked at me with the quiet pride of someone expecting gratitude. "Well," she asked, "what do you think?" "What do I think? I think I trusted you. I think you used me." Her expression shifted barely half a degree. "You inspired me." "That's not using someone. Elena, those were my words. My moments. Our moments." She folded her arms. "You're overreacting." I felt something break inside me, then quietly, like paper tearing. "Tell me the truth," I whispered. "Was I ever anything more than material to you?" She hesitated. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she didn't know how to package it into something less painful. "I thought you understood how I work," she finally said. The museum lights felt too bright, too sharp, too unforgiving. I walked away without another word. She didn't follow. The weeks that followed were the slowest unraveling of my life. I avoided the gallery floor. I took my lunch breaks on the roof. I stopped answering her texts, the ones that grew shorter and colder as the distance widened. My chest ached every time someone mentioned her name. But pain, I learned, has a strange way of becoming fuel. I started pouring myself into my own work. Sketches, drafts, photos. Not for her. Not for anyone. For me. I relearned what it meant to create without trying to impress someone. What it meant to exist without orbiting another person's gravity. People noticed the change. Some of the senior curators complimented my emerging style. One asked if I'd considered applying for the summer residency program. I started to breathe again. Then one evening, as I gathered my things, I found her waiting by the staff elevators. Elena. Her hair was messy, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion or regret or both. She looked less like the museum star, and more like the girl who once shared vending machine pretzels with me at 2 a.m. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "I'm not sure we do." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't know I hurt you that badly." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You didn't ask. That was the problem." She stepped closer. "I miss you. Please don't," I whispered. "Don't say things you only mean halfway." She flinched like I'd struck her. For a moment we stood in silence, the hum of the elevator the only witness between us. "I thought you were stronger," she said softly. And maybe once those words would have shattered me. But not anymore. "I am," I said. "Just not for you." Her breath caught. And for the first time since I met her, Elena Cruz looked breakable. "You really won't let me explain?" I shook my head. "I'm finally learning my worth. And I can't find it in a place where I was treated like an accessory to your genius." The elevator doors opened behind me with a soft chime. I stepped in. She didn't follow. As the doors closed between us, I felt grief and relief collide in my chest like clashing waves. Losing her hurt, but losing myself would have hurt more. And that was the beginning of the end. Or maybe the beginning of something else entirely. Something I didn't yet know was waiting for me. Something that would change everything again. The elevator carried me down to the lobby, each floor passing like a quiet exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. When the doors opened, the cold spring air rushed in through the glass entrance, brushing against my skin like a reminder that the world kept moving even when my heart didn't know how to. I stepped outside, letting the city swallow me in its noise, its haste, its indifference. And in a strange way, that indifference felt gentler than Elena's attention ever had. New York was thawing, the snow melting into thin rivers along the sidewalks, and I let my breath fog the air as I walked toward the subway. People hurried past with coffees and tote bags, and that particular brand of Manhattan determination that said their lives were too full to hold anyone else's pain. I envied them for that. I envied how simple their loneliness looked. The train home smelled like metal and something vaguely citrus. I sat by the window watching my reflection blur against the tunnels. My eyes looked tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. My cheeks were flushed from the wind, my hair messy. But there was something steadier in my expression, something that hadn't existed when I was orbiting Elena's world. Strength, maybe. Or the beginning of it. When I reached my small apartment in Queens, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch. I didn't cry. I think I had already spent all my tears somewhere between the gallery and the elevator. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, letting the silence settle around me like a blanket. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the first step. In the following weeks, the museum became a different universe. One I wasn't sure I belonged to anymore, but also one I wasn't ready to leave. My supervisor assigned me to the photography wing, far from Elena's exhibitions, far from her lingering shadow. And to my surprise, I started to flourish there. I'd always liked photography, but I never thought I was good enough to pursue it seriously. I treated it like a hobby, something safe, something quiet. But now the camera became my anchor, my escape, my reclaiming of something I had forgotten to nurture, myself. Some days I'd wander the city taking photos of people on park benches, street musicians, the way sunlight filtered through dusty shop windows. Other days I stayed in the museum darkroom, developing prints and losing myself in their grainy honesty. Photography didn't ask anything of me. Didn't take. It didn't consume. It simply let me exist. And maybe that was why, when the senior curator stopped by the darkroom one afternoon and looked at my prints, something shifted in my life again. "These are beautiful," she said, her brows slightly raised as she picked up one of the pieces. "You have an eye for the feeling behind the moment." The feeling. No one had ever said that to me before. She continued, "Have you considered applying for the Summer Emerging Artist Residency?" My heart nearly stumbled out of my chest. The residency. The impossible program. The one people whispered about in the halls. The one that accepted less than 5 interns each year. I opened my mouth, closed it, then managed I didn't think I was ready. She set the photo down carefully. "You're more ready than you think. And you deserve to take up space here." Deserve. That word hit harder than I let her see. She gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. "And don't worry about Elena. She's not on the selection committee." My stomach tightened at the mention of her name, but it no longer caved in. Just flickered. Like the echo of an ache, not the ache itself. "I'll apply," I said quietly. "I think I need to." "Good," she smiled. "You should." When she left, I stared down at the print still lying in the tray, a photograph I'd taken of 2 women in Central Park, one resting her head on the other's shoulder, their foreheads touching, eyes closed, both smiling with that soft, private joy that felt almost sacred. Maybe I had taken that photo because I missed the feeling it depicted. Maybe I had taken it because I still believed it was possible. Maybe. I submitted my portfolio the following week. And then waited. Waiting is a strange kind of torture. It makes you measure the silence between thoughts. It forces you to confront all the versions of yourself you're afraid of returning to. But even in the waiting, I stayed busy. I showed up early to my shifts. I found a new coffee shop near the museum that made matcha lattes with mint, a combination I found accidentally, but grew addicted to. I called my mom more often, and for the first time I didn't minimize my life to make her worry less. But one thing stayed constant. I avoided Elena, which became harder when she started trying to find me. It began subtly. A message in the group chat asking if anyone had seen me in the East Wing. A lingering presence in the hall whenever I passed by. An unread notification from her at midnight that said, "Can we talk?" I never responded. Then one morning I found her waiting in the staff lounge, leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking. My pulse stuttered. I considered turning around, but she saw me before I could. "Hey," she said gently. "Can we talk for a minute?" I kept my voice steady. "I'm actually late to assist with an installation, so." "Please," she interrupted, not forceful but desperate. "Just 1 minute." Something in her tone cracked through my defenses. Not enough to let her in, but enough to stop me from walking away. "Fine," I said. 1 minute. She set the mug down. "I'm sorry." The words hung between us, trembling, raw, unfamiliar coming from her. I crossed my arms. For which part exactly? Her eyes softened in a way I wasn't prepared for. For all of it. For the exhibit. For assuming you'd understand. For not asking. For treating you like something I could interpret instead of someone I should have protected. My throat tightened, but I held my ground. You hurt me, Elena. She nodded, her jaw trembling slightly. I know. And I would take it back if I could. Not the art, but the way I did it. The way I treated you like a concept instead of a person. I messed up. I see that now. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. Vulnerable. Unvarnished. But it was too late. You only see it now because I left, I said. Maybe, she whispered. But it doesn't make the apology less real. I swallowed hard, choosing my words carefully. You apologized and I hear you. But hearing you doesn't mean I can go back to how things were. I can't be that girl again. Not for you. Not for anyone. She blinked, her lashes wet from unshed tears. I don't want you to be that girl again. I just want, I don't know, something that doesn't hurt like this. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself. We can't fix this, I said. Not right now. Maybe not ever. And that's okay. Her breath shook. Does that mean we're done? I hesitated. Maybe done wasn't the right word. Maybe we were undone. Maybe we were finally honest. It means we need time, I said quietly. Both of us. She nodded slowly. And when time passes, I met her gaze. Then we'll see who we've become. There was something soft and broken in her expression, something that looked a little like hope and a little like regret wrapped into one. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She stepped aside, letting me pass, and this time when I walked away, the ache in my chest didn't pull me backward. It simply lingered behind me, fading with each step. 2 days later, the email arrived. I was accepted into the residency. I stared at the screen for a full minute before the shock finally cracked into disbelief. Then joy. Then a trembling wave of validation that hit me so hard I had to sit down. I got in. I got in. I reread the email 3 times before rushing to the curator's office, tears burning my eyes. She hugged me like she'd been waiting for the news as much as I had. You earned this, she whispered. Don't forget that. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like the world wasn't something I had to shrink myself to fit into. I felt enough. The residency began the following Monday. The schedule was intense, the expectations high, but I finally felt like I was moving toward the version of myself I'd always wanted to meet. I spent hours in the studio, experimenting with light, color, stories told in shadows and reflections. I learned to trust my instincts, to trust my voice, and slowly, quietly, the wounds Elena left behind began to close. But the universe has a strange sense of timing, because on the 3rd week of the residency, during a guest lecture, I saw her again. Not Elena. Someone else. Someone who looked at me like they could already see the parts of me I hadn't learned to embrace yet. Someone who would change everything. But that part of the story hadn't fully unfolded yet. Not then. Not quite. The guest speaker that day was introduced as Riley Hart, a documentary photographer known for capturing the quiet resilience of everyday Americans. I had seen her work before, raw, intimate, honest, but I hadn't expected her presence to feel like stepping into sunlight after months of winter. She stood at the front of the studio in a denim jacket spattered with paint, her sandy brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail, a camera slung casually around her neck. There was something effortlessly warm about her, a steadiness that eased the air around her rather than bending it the way Elena always had. When her lecture ended, the residents gathered around her to ask questions. I stayed back, not because I didn't want to meet her, but because old habits clung to me. Stay small, stay quiet, stay invisible until someone invites you to be seen. But Riley noticed me anyway. You're the one who took the window reflection series, right? She said as she approached. I blinked, surprised. How did you know? She smiled with a kind of sincerity that made it impossible to doubt her. I walked through the residency studio earlier. Your work stood out. You capture people like you're holding their stories instead of stealing them. That sentence hit me harder than she could have known. I felt my throat tighten. Thank you. That means a lot. She studied me for a moment, her gaze gentle but discerning. What's your name? I told her. She repeated it softly, as if trying it on. Then she nodded toward the courtyard. Want to walk with me? I hesitated for half a heartbeat before saying yes. We stepped outside into the early summer dusk, the sky tinted pink and lavender. Students lingered around the fountain, laughter echoing off the stone walls. Riley and I found a quieter corner beneath a sprawling oak tree. So, she asked, what made you start photographing people so closely? I hesitated before answering, choosing my words carefully. Someone once taught me that intimacy can be mistaken for possession. I think I'm trying to unlearn that through my art. She nodded slowly, as if she understood more than the words I had spoken. And how's that going? I thought about the residency, about finding myself again, about learning to breathe without someone else's approval. I think I'm getting there. Her smile stretched wider. Good. You deserve that. A soft quiet settled between us, not awkward, but comfortable, like we were 2 pages in the same book meeting for the first time. Then she looked at me with a spark of mischief. Can I take a photo of you? My heartbeat stumbled. Why? Because some people carry entire stories in their eyes, she said. And yours look like they've just learned how to tell the truth. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Maybe I did a little of both. I nodded. Riley lifted her camera, her expression shifting into focus. I felt strangely safe under her lens, seen in a way that wasn't extraction or admiration but understanding. When she lowered the camera, her voice softened. You look lighter in person than you think. Something warm bloomed in my chest. We walked back toward the studio, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a pull toward someone that wasn't rooted in pain. But life isn't a clean page turn. It writes itself in overlapping ink. Because when I returned to the museum the next week to retrieve archived prints, I ran into Elena. She was standing in Gallery B, staring at an empty pedestal like it had said something unforgivable. When she turned and saw me, her breath hitched. You look different, she said quietly. I shrugged. I feel different. She stepped closer, but not too close. I meant what I said before. I'm sorry. And I missed the version of us that felt possible. The old ache tugged at me, gentle but persistent. But next to that ache was something steadier, something new. I miss what I thought we could be, I admitted. But we weren't that. We didn't know how to be. Her eyes shimmered with something fragile. Could we learn now? For a brief moment, I let myself imagine it, the nights in her studio, the laughter, the spark that had once felt like fate. But wounds that once shaped me no longer defined me. And longing wasn't the same as compatibility. I shook my head. Elena, I cared about you in ways I didn't know how to name. But I lost myself trying to fit inside your world. And I won't do that again. She inhaled sharply, a soft break in her composure. So this is goodbye? I smiled sadly. No, just not hello again. She nodded slowly, accepting the truth even if it bruised. I hope you find someone who sees you without needing to own you. I already am, I whispered. She froze, realizing. Then she smiled, small but sincere. I'm glad. And for the first time we parted without bitterness. Without regret. Without the weight of each other. Outside, the late afternoon sun spilled across the concrete steps. Riley was waiting for me near the entrance, leaning against the railing with her camera hanging loosely at her hip. When she spotted me, her face brightened. Hey, thought I'd walk you home if you're up for company. Something inside me settled with quiet certainty. I stepped toward her. I'd like that. We walked side by side through the warm breeze, our shoulders brushing every now and then, each touch sending a soft ripple through me. It wasn't a storm like with Elena. It wasn't adrenaline. It was gentle, growing warmth, the kind that feels like safety, learning how to fall in love again. When we reached the subway entrance, Riley hesitated. Can I show you the photo I took of you? I nodded. She scrolled through her camera, then turned it toward me. In the image, I was sitting beneath the oak tree, sunlight fractured across my face. My expression was open, not guarded, not afraid, not small. I looked like someone who had finally reclaimed her own light. A quiet breath escaped me. I didn't know I could look like that. Riley's voice softened. That's because you finally see yourself. I only captured it. Emotion swelled in my chest, so suddenly I had to blink hard to steady myself. Can I take a picture of you too? I asked. She grinned. Absolutely. I lifted my camera. Riley stepped into the fading light, her eyes warm and steady on mine. And when I pressed the shutter, I knew. I was no longer a display piece in someone else's collection. I was my own story, my own truth, my own beginning. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to let someone new be part of it. The city hummed around us, alive and endless. She smiled. Ready? I smiled back, feeling the future crack open like a sunrise. Yeah, I whispered. I'm ready. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.